It is not found in polished speech, in reputation, in achievement, nor even in those actions performed under the approving gaze of others. The human being is a mystery concealed behind appearances. And yet, despite all efforts at concealment, there are moments when the deeper nature reveals itself. Jung devoted much of his life to the study of the persona, the social mask each of us wears in order to meet the demands of the world. This mask is not inherently false. It is necessary. We all require a face with which to meet society. But the danger begins when a person mistakes the mask for the self. Then life becomes performance, and the soul retreats into darkness. No matter how carefully a person constructs an image, there are certain moments when the hidden structure of the psyche becomes visible. Two signs, in particular, disclose what lies beneath the surface. The first is this: observe what a person condemns with unusual intensity in others. Whenever a judgment carries excessive heat, it is seldom only about the other person. It usually reveals something about the one who judges. Jung understood that what we cannot accept in ourselves is often projected outward. We exile a trait from consciousness, and then we encounter it everywhere in the world around us. We call it other. We call it the fault of someone else. But psychologically, it belongs first to us. A man may condemn another for arrogance, yet be deeply at war with his own buried desire for power. A woman may despise vanity in others, while secretly suffering from an unacknowledged need to be seen and admired. One person attacks selfishness because they have never granted themselves the right to have needs. Another attacks weakness because they are terrified of their own vulnerability. In this way, judgment becomes a map of the shadow. The shadow, in Jung's thought, is not merely evil. It is everything in us that has been rejected, denied, or left unlived. It contains our primitive impulses, yes, but also our vitality, our creativity, our intensity, our neglected strength. Much of what is noble in a person lies hidden there alongside what is difficult. For this reason, harsh criticism can reveal not only what someone fears in themselves, but also what they secretly long to become. If you wish to know the inner conflict of another, do not listen only to their ideals. Listen to their accusations. Watch whom they resent. Notice the type of person who repeatedly disturbs their peace. Often, the soul is announcing its unfinished business through the language of condemnation. The second sign is this: observe what happens when a person's mask is threatened. A persona can function smoothly for years. Someone may appear composed, generous, rational, disciplined, even enlightened. But when their self-image is pierced, when they are criticized, ignored, contradicted, embarrassed, or exposed, something older and more instinctive emerges. At that moment, one no longer sees merely the social self, but the structure beneath it. How does a person respond when they are no longer in control of the impression they are making? Do they become cruel the instant they are wounded? Do they lie to preserve dignity? Do they betray others to protect themselves? Do they collapse inward and disappear into self-pity? Or can they remain inwardly steady, even when the image cracks? These moments are of immense psychological significance. Under pressure, the artificial requires too much energy to maintain. The psyche reverts to its deeper patterning. What appears then is often closer to truth than years of polished behavior. A person may seem kind when all goes well, yet become merciless when humiliated. Another may seem powerful, yet dissolve when admiration is withdrawn. Someone else may appear humble, but when overlooked, reveal enormous vanity. These are not accidents. They're disclosures. Stress, offense, failure, and frustration do not create character. They reveal it. And yet the matter does not end there. For these same signs by which we judge others also judge us. This is the unsettling aspect of Jung's insight. The lens must eventually turn inward. The very things that disturb us most in others point toward the unresolved regions of our own psyche. The moments in which our own masks fail are equally instructive. We are never only observers. We are participants in the same drama. If another person's arrogance irritates you beyond measure, you must ask, what is my relationship to power, pride, and self-assertion? If deceit enrages you, where do I live in self-deception? If weakness repels me, what softness in myself have I condemned? If attention-seeking offends me, what unlived need in me still longs to be acknowledged? Such questions require courage, because the ego prefers innocence. It wishes to believe that the darkness belongs elsewhere. But the task of individuation, the task Jung considered central to psychological development, begins precisely when one withdraws these projections and accepts responsibility for the rejected self. To see another person clearly without seeing oneself is illusion. To analyze others without self-analysis is vanity disguised as insight. There is, however, a further distinction that reveals even more about character. How a person responds when their shadow is made visible to them. Some people become immediately defensive. They cannot tolerate reflection. The moment their contradiction is named, they attack, deny, or distort. These individuals remain governed by unconscious forces precisely because they cannot bear to know themselves. Others will admit their patterns intellectually, but only in abstraction. They can say, yes, perhaps I do that, but the admission is bloodless. It does not descend into transformation. And then there are those rare individuals who can truly reflect. When confronted with their own projection, they do not merely defend or collapse. They become curious. They pause. They consider. They suffer the wound of self-recognition without fleeing from it. These are the people in whom consciousness is growing. For Jung, maturity was never perfection. It was not moral superiority, nor a spotless personality. It was the increasing capacity to endure the tension of self-knowledge, to know that one is both more noble and more dangerous than one previously imagined, to recognize that beneath civility there is chaos, beneath judgment there is fear, beneath admiration there is longing, and beneath the mask there is a stranger waiting to be known. This understanding should not make one cynical. On the contrary, it should make one more compassionate. When you see that a person's harsh judgments arise from their own hidden pain, you become less eager to condemn. When you realize that their defensiveness is often the trembling of a threatened self, you understand that much of human behavior is tragic before it is malicious. The world is filled with people trying, awkwardly and unconsciously, to defend themselves against parts of their own soul. This does not mean one should abandon discernment. It does mean that discernment must be joined with humility. The purpose of seeing clearly is not domination. It is not manipulation. It is not superiority. The purpose is consciousness. To know what another person reveals in judgment and in pressure is useful. But to know what you reveal in those same moments, that is transformative. For then the world becomes a mirror. Every conflict becomes a clue. Every emotional reaction becomes a doorway. Every encounter becomes an invitation to recover a lost fragment of the self. In the end, the question is not merely, what does this reveal about them? The deeper question is, what does this reveal about me? The person who irritates you may be carrying a rejected piece of your own nature. The person you idealize may be expressing a quality you have not yet dared to live. The moment you lose composure may show you exactly where your persona ends and your real inner work begins. To become conscious is painful. Jung never hid this, but he understood that the refusal of this pain condemns a person to repetition. One who does not examine projection remains ruled by it. One who never questions the mask becomes imprisoned inside it. One who avoids the shadow is eventually shaped by it in secret. So if you wish to understand character, watch for these two revelations. First, what a person cannot stop condemning. Second, who they become when their mask begins to fail. But do not stop there. Turn the same gaze inward. Study your own judgments. Observe your own defensiveness. Notice the traits that stir disproportionate emotion in you. Ask what your soul has buried, denied, or left unlived. For the ultimate aim is not merely to see through others. It is to see through yourself. And when that seeing becomes honest enough, something extraordinary begins. The mask grows lighter. The shadow grows less frightening. What was once projected outward returns home. And a person slowly becomes more whole, not because they have become pure, but because they have become real. That was Jung's deeper message. Not that we should become flawless, but that we should become conscious.